fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
Saludos and salutations, Broncos country, and welcome to another exciting episode of Broncos Talk. I'm your host, Adan Diaz, and joining me to my right is at Richie. Richie, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm not so bad. How are you? Sorry, guys, just in full disclosure, my location where I'm broadcasting from is under a full tornado watch. It is green skies outside, so I may randomly drop off if I absolutely lose power. I do have a generator, but there is a short lag between when it kicks in and when power goes out. So you've been warned.
Sorry to hear. I hope everybody over there is safe regardless.
Thank you.
Nonetheless. But guys, just want to welcome you guys into the season 2 episode of Broncos Talk. Guys, want to thank you guys so much for making season 2 launch so successful. We kicked it off with Broncos Talk last week. Of course, MHRT Podcast and the Nothing Rhymes With. It has been an amazing 3 days, guys. And the football hasn't even been snapped yet. That's how amazing you guys have been. So thank you to everybody that has tuned in so far to season 2. And we hope you continue to enjoy the content that we put out there for you guys as season 2 rolls on. We got a lot of exciting and great stuff, guys, coming to you guys. So make sure you guys are tuned in. So with that being said, just want to remind everybody out there, if this is your first time watching us, that we are a fan-led, Broncos-based podcast filling you in on all things NFL news, but more importantly, Broncos news. We go live every single Tuesday at 7/6/54 on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. Also, just remember to make sure you guys hit those thumbs up. If you have available to you, comment and share this podcast wherever it is you're watching us from. We always do appreciate being able to spread the MHRT network all across social media. Just remember that the more interaction that we get on these pods, the more eyes they get in front of, which means more people can enjoy the content that we put out there and provide for you guys. So make sure you guys slap those thumbs up buttons, subscribe, turn on notifications so that you can know when we go live, anytime we post our amazing content on our pages, and so that other Broncos fans out there in Broncos country can know that we are here. So with that being said, guys, today's episode, Richie and I are going to talk about week 1, which is something we've been waiting for since the end of, what was it, Rich? January, the last time the Broncos snapped the football. So it's just, it's amazing, Rich. I am so excited for this coming Sunday. How about you?
So what you're saying is that by the time our next episode rolls around, we would have had a game.
Yes, that's exactly correct.
I mean, is there any way you can say that without smiling? Let's just get real, right? I mean, I'd be remiss. I'm super stoked to get into this whole Giants game and get into that kind of back and forth and analysis with everyone here. I do think we'd be remiss if we didn't at the very least discuss 2 other Broncos news items that cropped up over the last, we'll say 24 to 48 hours, I think is a fair statement to make. We talk pretty regularly, throughout the week in between our pod as a collective group here at MHRT Network. I would classify ourselves as a tight-knit group of friends. And it really is, awesome to be part of the group. When we look at what's occurred over this past week, there's 2 main articles. The first is the details that cropped up that were posted on IG and Twitter with regards to John Elway and the NFL's response to that infamous Hall of Fame worthy quarterback debacle versus the New Orleans Saints. For those who did not see that news, apparently what had happened was our quarterbacks, according to the reports as of the most recent ones, did in fact take off their tracing devices and place them in 4 corners of the room, or at least far enough apart where they were okay. And as a result, when the close contact piece came back and video evidence was reviewed, it basically came back where they made best efforts to try and hide the fact that they were actually closer together than they actually were as a result of doing that. Your thoughts?
You know what? I couldn't really believe it when I first read about it. And like you said, that whole thing was brought to us by our boss Mundungus. He brought it to my attention anyway. So it's kind of hard to believe when you really sit there and think about it. Hello, Nikki. Welcome to the show. Nobody really knows if this is true. Like it all sounds like speculation and hearsay at this point. So I guess we're all just sitting patiently to see if anybody from the Broncos organization will come out and say, hey, look, this is okay. This is exactly what happened. Or if it's going to go the other way and say, hey, this isn't true. This is all made up. John Elway's not in charge anymore in terms of the general manager. So seeing how George Paton is probably looking to lead a pretty tight ship, I think that unless anything else comes out towards the subject that goes in terms of trying to prove it's real, I don't think we'll hear anything else about this going forward, Rich.
No, I think if we saw the draft process with George Paton, I think that pretty much tells us everything we need to know about him and just how he likes to run things. And just on that note, the no communication out of Dove Valley was such a pleasant surprise for me. It really caught me a bit off guard, something I wasn't used to hearing or seeing. I mean, the last 2 or 3, drafts, for all intents and purposes, the Broncos as fans, we may as well just taken the first day off.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like we already knew who we were picking. Like it was published. We may as well just said, look, I'll take a vacation. We'll see you on day 2. Peace. Because right. I mean, it was widely known who we were taking. It wasn't even a secret at that point. So I just think that what we saw from our GM was a pleasant surprise from my perspective. Now, I think an interesting spin on this is, and frankly, having employees who do report to me and having been in leadership positions in multiple organizations, this is certainly an undermining of trust between the players and the organization. There was some rumors when this first came out last year that Brett Rippon had not taken off his bracelet, but then it wasn't called out specifically in the recent reports that just came out. So, until the real deal stuff gets released, you can't really know exactly who to place blame on. But I do think that, actions speak, if you will. And we saw a lot go on this offseason that would certainly be indicative of our organization having lost at least a fair degree of trust in Drew Lock. Not only by bringing in Teddy Bridgewater, who is clearly a competent starter in his own right. He may not let the league start on fire and, go crazy. He's certainly not a Patrick Mahomes or anything like that. But I do think that we did see an erosion of that trust as a result of intentionally trying to obfuscate what had happened and hide, the truth. And frankly, I think it cost the team dearly, because I actually think we could have beaten the Saints in that game if we had at least 1 or 2 of those quarterbacks with us.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that happened in that game, Rich, to say that the Broncos could have beaten the Saints. I think that maybe the Broncos could have kept pace with the Saints. I don't know if beating them would have been something I could probably say with confidence, if that sounds anything, because the Saints coming in, even without Drew Brees, were playing some really good football. Let's just be honest about the thing.
Oh, they're a fantastic team. Don't get me wrong.
They're a fantastic team.
We had a pretty good defense last year that I think could have really done. I think our defense could have done better if they were kept off the field longer. And as a result, we could have seen more points put on the field. It would have changed the dynamic of the game. Is my point, right?
Yeah. Basically, the Broncos by that point in time, Rich, even without a quarterback, we were kind of hobbling towards the finish line in terms of injuries. Now, if that would have been like a week 1, week 2 early game when before the injury bug really hurt us, totally different story. I would have totally agreed with you. I would have told you the Broncos would have put the pedal to the metal. They would have given the Saints a run for their money. But the fact that the Broncos didn't have a quarterback out there, even in that moment in time, Rich, that really put us in a hole even bigger than the one we were going just, even talking about that game. So, and that whole incident thing still rubs Broncos fans the wrong way. I know it does to me every time I think about it. And I still haven't forgiven Roger Goodell about that. So,
I did want to bring up just a few other things. I want to announce we have a few new people here in the chat, so that's fantastic. And I also wanted to point out, you'll see right up here behind me, Broncos Country has a American version of the flag that I had custom made behind me here. I am Canadian, and as a result, we don't get those nice fancy things with our flags and whatnot on it. So I had one made for me by a local company that is a custom flag maker that's about 5 or 6 minutes away from my house. So that is my Canadian version of the American Broncos flag that you see behind our infamous Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue tag team on Fridays. So I just thought I'd point that out. With regards to those in the chat, do you want to go ahead and start pulling them up and we'll start announcing? I think it's fantastic. One thing I'd like to point out, I love having other teams' fans in here. I love getting a different perspective, another fan's perspective of our team in here. I think it's absolutely unbelievable having that in. So, Nikki, I do appreciate you coming in. Please don't leave. I really would love to hear your perspective on things in our team. And I did see your question earlier. We will bring it up about McCain, who you guys brought in, and we can go over that a little bit later on.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Rich. Let's start from the very top. Of course, with our good friend Dave Glassman, who says, Chubb, 2020 quarterback room, Giants, MHRT Fantasy, let's go. Dave, it's always a pleasure to have you. Savage Cisneros, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, saying, yo, thank you so much, Savage, for the shout out, the promotion you've done for our channel. Guys, make sure you guys go and check out Savage's channel. He's probably just maybe even a bigger Broncos fan than Rich and I are ourselves. So make sure you guys give him a follow. Johnny Baki, of course, our former co-host, saying, Dave, this fantasy season is going to be off the chain. And he's totally right, because it is. Vic saying, good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon to you, Vic. Thank you so much for joining us. EJ saying, what's up, Broncos country? EJ, good to see you, my friend. Mundungus Jr., Landon Clark saying, hello, everyone. Hello, Landon.
No, that's the Whiz Kid.
The Whiz Kid. That's right.
It's the Whiz Kid. That's it. That's the only name he's allowed to go by.
Okay. And then, of course, Nikki Cunningham. Nikki, thank you so much for coming in and tuning in and watching Broncos podcast. Doesn't really matter that you're an Eagle fan. We're here to project what we feel about our beloved Broncos. And we welcome people from any team, any race. Doesn't matter. We're all here. We're all here to talk about football. It's all about respect and courtesy. And who else? I saw somebody. Oh, Avatar. Hello, Avatar. He says, hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm late. Hey, man, don't worry. Pull up a chair, open a beer, enjoy the show. Travis Tarbox saying, evening, fellas, Denver Broncos for life. That's right.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Travis. Thank you.
Yeah, and don't you guys ever forget it. Now, let's go to that question you were talking about, Rich, because I was trying to think. Maybe I can't find it. You said it was about Mac McCain?
Yeah, McCain. I believe they signed, I think the Eagles signed him, which is the reason for the question.
Oh, right, here it is. What can you tell me about this Mac McCain?
Right.
Now, I don't know who that is off the top of my head. I'm going to be honest with you.
He was a late addition, came in. We had him as a third string guy. I'm actually trying to remember if we brought him back on the practice squad and if the Eagles signed him direct to their 53 or to their. I don't know if it's 53 or practice squad. I'm sorry. I will admit, Nikki, love talking other teams' football. I know some stuff about a lot of the other teams, and there's just stuff that I just don't know about the other teams. He actually had a pretty good preseason for us. So if you were to go back and watch through the Broncos preseason games, Nikki, I would highly recommend you do so. Follow me on Twitter and reach out. I'm happy to kind of pass on some spots where you can check it out. And yes, I have a Canadian accent, so just you'll have to live with that too. So he had some great games. He had some great pass breakups and overall played pretty well. I was actually hoping he was going to come back on our practice squad, especially with the Denver Broncos injuries we had. And then the other guy that I was hoping that would come back for us, however, Green Bay signed him at the end of the roster cuts, was I'm going to completely mispronounce his first name again. His last name is Ferris. It was like Rostermangen or something like that. And he was a guy that I think played alongside either Patrick Surtain or Jerry Jeudy. I just can't remember which. And he was having some really good plays. He was lighting it up throughout training camp. I have a funny feeling that the Broncos were hoping to slide him onto the practice squad, but I think that was wishful thinking. He got too much press, and I think he was too well known by the time it was time for roster cuts.
Yeah.
So
Johnny Baki has helped us out answer this question. He says, Nikki, Mac McCain was a 3-year starter in college. He recorded 8 interceptions, 2 of them pick sixes, and knocked down 30 passes in those 3 seasons. Decent practice squad guy to develop. So thank you so much, Johnny, for helping us out with that question. Nikki, I hope that answers your question to a certain degree. Like Richie said, if you want to know anything more about that information, feel free to reach out to any one of us on Twitter, and we'll be more than happy to help you get more info on this Mac McCain character.
I think in short, I really liked him. So, the fact that he's over with you guys there, that would be something that I would be happy about. Now, whether or not he lights it up over there, that's a different story. But I think in short, I really liked him. I think a few others around here liked him as well. So sad to see him go, but I think you got yourself a quality player. And as Johnny pointed out there, at minimum, he's a great guy to keep on your team to develop, and hopefully, he can start rising up to the occasion and become, a backup or even a starter.
Right. But guys, let's get to what you guys came for, and that's talk about our week 1 matchup with the New York Giants. Now, there has been a lot of ups and downs going on in the Giants camp recently. I don't follow them personally, but I have read articles that said they're really hoping that Saquon Barkley is 100% and good to go, because it sounds like they need his help now more than ever. And while that Giants defense last year did pretty good, Rich, we talked about this briefly on the MHRT last Thursday, where the Giants defense was kind of overlooked as, being one of those defenses that, probably weren't very good. And yet they went into Seattle and beat Russell Wilson in his house, which is not something easy for any team to do that isn't a division rival anyway. So with that being said, I don't think the Giants, me personally, I don't think the Giants are going to be that huge of a problem offensively, because I don't think Daniel Jones is the answer the Giants are looking for. I think Daniel Jones is probably in the same boat where Drew Lock would have been if Drew Lock would have won the starting position here in Denver this year, where it's like, we need you to go out there and prove that you can be the guy to lead the New York, because there's going to be quite a few big names, quarterback names open in free agency next year, Richie. So quarterbacks like Daniel Jones and other, quarterbacks that struggle this year are more than likely going to be out of a job if their team can go out and get a big fish name quarterback.
See, that's the interesting piece with New York Giants, right? Is they brought in like a couple of guys for the offensive line. I actually see some parallels with regards to some of the pressures that the New York Giants offensive line let through and our very own. We struggled a fair amount last year in the offensive line. And you saw that when Drew Lock even got hurt. A free runner came around the edge. And it's as much as it's on Drew Lock to actually learn how to fall properly as a quarterback, which I agree with. I actually was taught how to fall properly playing rugby at a high level. So I actually can say that, yes, it is coached and it is taught. However, as much as it falls somewhat on Drew, it also falls just as much on the offensive lineman for letting a free runner come right around the edge and just clock him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Like these quarterbacks are relying on these offensive linemen in order to protect. Right. So it's not fair to solely blame the quarterback, and it's also not fair to solely blame the offensive lineman. But when I look at the New York Giants defensive ranking, you kind of brought it up there from MHRT on this past Thursday. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go check it out on YouTube. It's in our video playlist. Great guest on that show. Highly recommend checking it out. They had a league ranked defense in 9th last year. I mean, now on the flip side, their offense was 31st. So, I mean, they balanced themselves out, which is why they didn't do particularly well. But their defense is nothing to sneeze at, and it's something that we need to be very, very cautious of. The other thing I do want to point out, because it was looking like we were attempting to go a little bit more run heavy in our offense, and I actually agree with that particular move. The New York Giants have been particularly stout against the run. So from my perspective, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how we do in our run game against the New York Giants defense, because I think that they can really put up a pretty good fight.
Yeah, and that actually segues into our question, our second question of the night here, Rich, from EJ, who actually asked us, do you guys think we can effectively run the ball against the Giants defense?
EJ, stop looking at my notes.
Now, as Richie just said, guys, the Giants have one of the best rushing defenses in the league. Their secondary, totally different story. Now, because of their stout run defense, their secondary can kind of take a seat back, and they don't have to work as hard because the front seven or what have you can actually they pick up the brunt of the work. So all the secondary guys have to do is just make sure, to cause incompletions or, picks or what have you. So with that being said, you know what? It all really depends on how our offensive line can gel in terms of the right tackle. Right now, our right tackle is going to take some time. So we have to keep that in mind. Whenever you see Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams make a run towards the right, keep in mind that right tackle position, it's going to be rusty at first. It's going to take some time, to kind of get into the swing of things. And it's like, okay, the whole line moves together. It could be, we could be looking at a false start. We could be looking at, some Bobby Massey missing a block or something. It's not going to look good. Let's just put it that way. But with time, that's going to get better. Believe that. So is it going to be something where the Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams are going to run buck wild on the Giants defense? Maybe not buck wild. But if the offense can keep them guessing, where it's like, okay, if the Giants have to stack the box to stop our running backs, then they go to the air. If the Giants have to pull back to block the air, then you go with the run. It all depends on how Teddy Bridgewater and Pat Shurmur this season can learn to read a defense. We had that issue with Drew Lock last season where he couldn't really figure out what the defensive play was in front of him. But I don't think we'll have that issue with Teddy Bridgewater. Now, there will be times where Bridgewater, makes a bad play or a bad read and throws a pick. So that's that. But with his experience and his veterancy coming into play, I don't see that happening as frequent as a lot of non-Bridgewater supporters think it will happen.
Bridgewater is far better at adjusting the line than I think a lot of people give him credit for. It's why I understood why they may have gone with Bridgewater when I saw the news. That said, we already know what Bridgewater is. So there was a large part of me at the same time that kind of said, I think we probably should have stuck with Locke for a fixed period of time, gauge where we're at, and then moved. That's neither here nor there. That's just my personal opinion. However, we did see even in preseason, Teddy Bridgewater make better line adjustments to attempt to properly protect both himself and his skill players. The one thing that does concern me, though, is against a Giants stout defensive line, which, I mean, ranked 9th, that's no slouch, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's no slouch. So I think the one thing that we need to be extremely cautious of, and I really hope that we do make our best efforts to kind of basically just pound that ball and start that running game and spark it. I want to see those 2 tight end sets. I want to see those 3 tight end sets if we need to go down that route. Then you can start breaking off a tight end and then start throwing passing to the tight end, who's probably going to have an open flat after we have multiple successful runs. The seam will start to open up a little bit as they have to start bringing guys forward to try and stack that box and get closer to the line of scrimmage if we're successful running the ball, which I think we can be.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other important piece here for us in our run game, and I hate to be the one that constantly brings this up, but I'm not going to apologize for it, is Lloyd Cushenberry. If the interior defensive linemen from New York, who are clearly good, you don't rank 9th by having poor interior defensive linemen, and a secondary that's known to be not great, it's the interior defensive line that's probably really good, is if Lloyd Cushenberry cannot handle those interior blockers at the center position, we're going to have an extremely difficult time running the ball, because then that makes our run game one-dimensional as well. If you can't defend and push off those interior guys on the interior of the defensive line, then the defense then really only needs to then block the run on the outside, on the edges. And as you said, Massey was, we'll say, questionable in some of his blocking in preseason, and that's being generous. So we already know that means then the only good side that we could probably run on is the left, and that becomes predictable.
Well, wait, don't misconstrue me there, Rich. When I said right tackle, I didn't say that. I didn't mean to say that Massey's gonna he's gonna suck or anything. I'm just saying that it's gonna take him some time to get used to how the Denver O-line works and shifts and moves and all that, because he's so used to doing the things he did when he was here in Chicago. So with that being said, if he can come right out of the gate and be amazing like that, and make it look like, it doesn't need time for the offensive line to gel and they can get along smoothly, hey, beautiful, great. Let's get the show on the road. But I'm just saying, just be ready for that in case you see, certain run plays where Gordon gets stuffed, or Javonte Williams doesn't get as big a yardage as he should have been, or a hole that looks open for a second, gets close. That's what I'm saying. So also, with that being said, Rich, the best way to beat this Giants defense is probably the best way you can beat any really good defense, and that's by wearing them out. That's how a lot of teams over the past 5 years have beaten Broncos, the great defense, is just by wearing them out. When the offense turns the ball over in awkward positions in red zone, in their own field of play, that puts pressure on the defense to try to limit the damage, force a turnover, or, worst case scenario, just hold them to 3 points. So that's probably the best way to wear down this Giants defense, where they're going to start off formidable, but if you can wear them down as time goes on and just force them to make a mistake because they're too tired, then that'll give us a better advantage going forward. And I think that with Teddy Bridgewater, that's a very good, strong possibility of happening.
So I hate to constantly kind of come at it from the other angle. Let's just say that I'm not going to say Massey's going to suck, because I don't think that's fair or appropriate. We haven't seen enough of him yet against live bullets and that kind of stuff to really make a proper judgment. What I can look at is what I saw in preseason. And let's just say I was underwhelmed. I think he could have done better. I think he completely whiffed on 2 blocks. It wasn't even just that he missed. It wasn't even that he just didn't block them well. He completely missed the blocks. And that was a concern to me, because we already saw a guy do that last year, and thankfully he's not with our team anymore. So I'm just genuinely concerned that might be the version of Massey that we see this year on our team. And I just think that's not doing Bridgewater any favors by having a guy, particularly in key situations, if he lets a free runner go by. We just spoke about Lockett getting hurt last year. That's a concern of mine. I actually think Anderson, and I if you want to bring up Dave, he and I we seem to share a brain on a lot of these things. Calvin Anderson is the better run blocker at the right tackle position from what I saw from preseason. I mean, don't get me wrong. Anderson had his own challenges at the right tackle position in preseason as well. So I'm certainly not, elevating Anderson to some, crazy level or anything. But I do think that on the right-hand side of the ball, Anderson is the better run blocker. Now, oddly enough, Anderson is a better pass blocker when he plays on the left-hand side of the ball, which I think just comes from a flipping of technique and whatnot, which actually you and I have both brought up on separate instances on this pod about, that it's not just a flip of a switch to say, I'm playing right tackle now. So I think that from Massey's perspective, I think that he could really benefit from having a guy like Eric Saubert on the right-hand side to help him with the run defense. I also think that the pulling guard, so pulling Reisner from the left guard and then kind of swing blocking over alongside on the same side as Saubert, can really do a lot for us in our run game. Spark, jump that off, and then we can then lead that into play action pass, which I think both of our quarterbacks did very well with in the preseason.
Right. Let's try to get to some more of these questions here, Rich.
I agree.
With EJ having another question for us, he says, do you guys think Vaughn and Chubb will get consistent pressure on Daniel Jones? Now, I do think that this is a very strong possibility because the Giants offense, they're not as good as the media, especially Giants media, is putting them out to be. I just think that in a year where Daniel Jones has to go out there and put up numbers, I think he's going to be forcing the ball a lot of throws. Now, you can make the argument that the Giants have really good wide receivers, which they do, but if the offensive line cannot give Daniel Jones time to throw the ball and Daniel Jones just kind of has to say, well, he's out there somewhere and just chuck the ball and hope that one of his guys catches it. With this talented secondary we have, I honestly think that Vaughn and Chubb don't have to work as hard to get pressure on him and but if they do, great. They're talented enough to do that at various times and, give Bryce Callahan or Surtain or Kyle Fuller, who's ever out there in coverage, a chance to make a play for the ball and get our offense back out there.
I agree.
And make a big play.
I agree. The short answer is we saw Vaughn come back and he looked excellent in that preseason game that he returned. I think the New York Giants offensive line, particularly on the tackle positions, are very similar to the 1A and second string caliber of the Seattle offensive line. So I would certainly expect a very, very similar outcome to what we saw from Vaughn in that last preseason game that we saw him in. He really did look sharp, and you could. Let's just say when you saw Vaughn out there, it was a noted difference in terms of level and skill of play compared to his opponents. And that's to be expected when you're talking about a starter versus, a guy on the other side who's, fighting for that second string spot, basically.
Right.
In terms of Bradley Chubb, there's some news that came out about Chubb today, which ties very neatly into Travis's question here. Again, Travis, really do appreciate you joining us on a regular basis here on Broncos Talk.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. So Travis's question is, what's the deal with Bradley Chubb getting arrested? And more importantly, is he still going to play this weekend? In our chats and stuff offline, general comments and general consensus was the short answer is probably yes. Unless they keep and detain him in prison, which I don't think they will. He will likely make bail and will likely be allowed to play. His driver's license will likely be suspended until he returns to court in 2 to 3 months' time. And the severity of punishments will vary from a couple hundred hours of community service to a major fine or both. I don't suspect him to receive jail time. However, I do want to tie this a little bit into our Drew Lock and quarterback room topic, 6'10", and that is, from what my perspective is, we have heard George Payton heap praise on Justin Simmons, who is extremely high character, right? We have seen him heap praise on Cortland Sutton, who, by all accounts, appears to be another extremely high character individual who we have never heard anything negative about off the field. However, in a similar draft class or the same draft class, you have Bradley Chubb, who I cannot recall hearing our GM heap the same type of praise on Bradley Chubb, which does make me wonder to a certain extent if this is the incident that we've heard about as fans, but you always hear from these former NFL players. I know you're a fan of Undisputed. They're 6'10". Shannon Sharpe has dished a few times without giving names that you hear of the worst instances of these players, but typically speaking of those players that you hear instances from, there are many others behind the scenes that you do not hear of. And both he and Skip have had other NFL players on to basically confirm that fact. So I do wonder if maybe this is just one we've heard of, but there's other stuff, and that's why we haven't heard those positive vibes come out about Bradley Chubb from our GM.
No, I totally agree. There's a really weird sound coming from somewhere in my room, so I do apologize if I mute
can't hear
myself. Oh, you can't hear it?
I can't hear it.
Oh, okay, because I can.
You
hear
look like
it
you're chasing a fly right now on screen, but aside from that, I can't hear a thing. So
okay, it sounded really weird. Like I could hear it through my headphones, so I didn't want the microphone to pick it up. So no, but I totally agree with you, Rich. I honestly don't know what the deal is with this whole incident. I didn't even know he had a bench warrant out up until, like Rich talked about. We talked about this in our text. So
no, he didn't. He had a failure to appear.
Failure to appear, which
so he was supposed to show up in court, and he did not show up for that court date, which I only think was a couple days ago, right? Like right, I don't think this is something that was long term outstanding.
Yeah, so I don't think this is something serious where it's like gonna make huge NFL news, So I think this could be something that could end up like a slap in the wrist, and so. Of course, leave it to yeah. Okay. So anyway, to answer your question, Travis, Bradley Chubb should be a go for this coming Sunday. But even if for some, knock on wood, he doesn't show up, as we saw a lot of good play from Jonathan Cooper, who I believe is his second coming in from behind. Now that Jeremiah Tachu is no longer with Denver, he went to Chicago. So I do think that the Broncos will be able to play him. And this also leads us to our next question here from Kenneth Booker. Kenneth, hello, my friend. Thank you so much for watching and joining the show. He says, if you could go to one game this season, home or away, which game would you pick? That's a very good question, Rich. I would probably want to go to a divisional game simply for the fact that I love the rivalry when we play the Raiders or the Chargers or hell, even the freaking Chiefs. So I would probably pick one of those two games. If I had to choose between the three, though, I would probably say a Chiefs game because I want to be there when the Broncos finally beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, just so I can say I was there and I enjoyed myself and call it a moment in history if you want.
I think I would. Now, I'm going to kind of go back a little bit because I think that they're still establishing themselves where they are. But I would have loved to have gone to a Raiders game in Oakland in full Broncos gear. Just because I would have intentionally plunked myself somewhere across enemy lines, just because that's just who I am. I've taken advantage of the fact that I'm somewhat of a larger guy, so I can defend myself if need be. But that's just kind of the type of guy that I would be. I'm never offensive. I never want to kind of like poke fun. But just the fact that you have that bright orange that we sitting in the middle of like the Black Sea there, and I just kind of be like this on the Jumbotron as it's going, just because again that's who I am when I go to games. That would be where I'd want to go. I definitely want to be at a Raiders game.
You know what? As long as Broncos fans, the way Broncos fans just show up, even when it's an away game, it's amazing. Like the way they showed up for the Chargers games when they were still in LA or wherever it was where the Chargers were before they moved, or San Diego or what have you, was just amazing. It looked like a Broncos home game. So it was like a home away from home type of game.
My great grandfather, just to the Glenn's comment, played for the Hamilton Ticats. Before they were the Hamilton Ticats. He was a leatherhead. Like I actually have a picture of him in like the leather helmet and the whole bit. So I actually have some history with them. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call that my dream matchup, but I have some history with the CFL.
Guys, let me just tell you, if you ever want to know, like, I know Canton is full of football history and knowledge or what have you, but sometimes I think that even Canton can't hold a candle to what Glenn Hauser, like the knowledge he has. I mean, his museum alone is full of just Broncos memorabilia, damn near from when the Broncos became a franchise in 1964.
Well, Glenn has obtained so much football knowledge that his hair all fell out because the follicles just couldn't stay intact, right?
Yeah. So, guys, make sure you guys follow Glenn on Twitter and feel free to hit him, ask him any questions about football. He's always happy to answer.
Glenn's
He's a
awesome.
great guy. He's
Glenn's absolutely awesome.
And if you really want to see what just what he's working with in terms of his museum that we keep talking about, make sure you guys tune in on MHRT on the MHRT podcast every single Thursday at 7654 so you can see for yourself. Mark Langley, a name we haven't heard in a while, Rich. He's saying, "What's up, Mark? Where you been, man? Thanks for coming on the show, man. We love seeing you, bro." And he says, "Go Dogs." I'm guessing he's talking to what you were talking about, Rich. Travis also adds, "I went to Kansas City 3 times covered in Broncos gear. It was fantastic. I hate the Chiefs, so it made it that much better." You know what? That's one thing I really want to I don't understand is when you see like a division rival, say like at a store or something, doesn't necessarily have to be at a football game. I always felt that there would be like some sort obviously there's the rivalry. Like when I see somebody wearing a Raiders cap or a Chiefs jersey, or hell, even rare, something with the Chargers logo on it, if you want to go that far. But whenever I see that, or whenever somebody sees me with a Broncos hat, they usually always come up to me and say, "Hey man, we're going to kick your butt." It usually starts off with, "We're going to kick your butt this year," or they say something bad about the team. That's perfectly fine. Football makes you rival. It fuels it. It's great. But usually at the end of that, even with rivals, as much as we don't like the Raiders and the Chiefs and the Chargers, there's a little bit of sportsmanship that says, "Hey, great game, go out there, kick some ass," type of mentality. But even when you meet people that they just don't like your team just because, even though they don't know jack about it, they don't know who the quarterback is, they don't know offense or defense or whatever, they just hate the logo or the team name or whatever. And to me, that's always bothered me, because if you're going to go out and hate something, at least have some reason why you don't
They
like
do.
it.
They're just not willing to admit it. We've beaten them more times than they've beaten us.
That's
right?
Probably true.
No, I'm serious. Like, we're a winning franchise, and that's great. Like, I love being a Broncos fan. We are a winning franchise, full stop, period. However, this last 5 years, we haven't done so well, and I acknowledge that. However, generally speaking, overall, for the most part, we have beaten a good percentage of our division rivals. And I think what they're really upset about, particularly is when we had Peyton Manning, is it wasn't just that we beat them, it was how we beat them. He was putting on a clinic effectively against these other teams. And I think that they were just getting so frustrated that he was just like, "You think you're going to beat me with that again?" and I just think it annoyed them, right? Because it was like, it was like watching Aaron Rodgers when you see him play with the Green Bay Packers, right? He sees the look once and he says, you better not be pulling that again, right? And then you see him adjust, and then you're like, you tried to pull it again on Aaron Rodgers. That's not going to work, right? And Peyton Manning's the same way. Tom Brady's the same way. You have these upper echelon quarterbacks that they're all like, we all know who they are. And they look at these coverages and they laugh. They're like, "This is hilarious. You're done." And that's just the way they roll.
You know what really ticks me off, though, since we're on this subject, is especially here in Chicago, since the Bears colors are similar to what the Broncos wear. And I'm well aware of the fact that the Bears have been around longer than the Bears. That's football 101. Everybody knows that. Is when I walk into a store and the first thing that a Bears fan says to me is, "You're wearing the wrong colors." And it's kind of like, I'm not wearing anything that doesn't have a Broncos logo on it. It's not just.
Do you know what you say to that?
You know
what you say to that as a response? "No, I'm wearing the right shades of the colors."
Well, no, I usually laugh because I'm like, okay, I take it as a joke. But when they put that serious face on, when they're like, "Seriously, bro, you're wearing the wrong color," it's like, all right, bro, now you're just being silly, So, and then it's like, okay, a little bit of smack talk goes around, and and then obviously they bring up, "Well, we beat you guys last time in Denver." I'm like, Yeah. No lie. That's not a lie.
Right.
In fact, you guys
So,
beat us.
Maybe we can go back to the Giants game because I think this is really interesting. I would love to hear from the collective group. This is what I think about when I'm off the air is we saw some pretty concerning things, in my opinion, this preseason with regards to our run stopping. I didn't see really aggressive run stopping. I didn't see us get tackles for loss when it came to the run game, that kind of stuff. And with the New York Giants, even though their offensive line is not particularly great, we did not rank particularly well last year against the run as the Denver Broncos. In fact, we were in the bottom half of the league overall for run stopping. So curious to see what your thought is, 6'10", and also everyone else's thoughts on this as well. Do you think we should be concerned about the run game of the Giants, given the fact that the majority of our defensive line is coming back from 2020, and the fact that we did not see marked improvement this past preseason against the run game? And so are we maybe primed to see more of the same in terms of run game struggles?
Let's just get one thing straight here, Rich. I personally think that the Giants are rushing Saquon out on the field. That's just what I'm getting from all these reports. And it's like, even though those reports are positive, saying, Barkley's on the mend, he's on the uprise, he's ready to play. It's kind of basically the Broncos and the Giants are in the exact same position where they want to make week one a statement game. You've read from most of the analysts on NFL and, your Colin Cowherds and hell, even your Skip Baylesses, where nobody really has faith in Denver. They'll say Denver has a great defense, but for them to go out on a limb and say they'll make the playoffs, it's kind of like almost as if they were saying they're going to go and win a Super Bowl. And so that to me is a bit of a slap in the face in terms of you don't want to put us in the same echelon as other players who are, have a great possibility of making the playoffs, like New England. New England cuts Cam Newton, and all of a sudden they're playoff contenders and they can go to the Super Bowl and what have you. But with Cam, you didn't hear any of that talk. So to me, that's just, a lot of people just fulfilling a balloon with air that doesn't need anymore, and it's almost getting ready to pop. So with that being said, I think that the Broncos are going to treat this as a really big statement game to say, hey, look, we're here. We just beat the Giants. And it's not going to be like one of those we barely beat them by a field goal type of games. I think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to go out there. He's going to put on a clinic. Jerry Jeudy's on the come up. Our defense is going to really put on a show. It's going to be a really great game. I'm not so much worried about Saquon because I don't feel Saquon is at 100%. I'm pretty sure he's going to start off like he is. And then it's kind of go towards like, he didn't play any preseason. So we don't know. Nobody knows if he can still jump cut like he normally does, if he can still bulldoze, if he can still, none of that. It's untested. So there's a chance he can go out there and get himself hurt just as bad as he did when he got hurt playing in Chicago. So that's just my honest opinion.
I would agree with some of that because we've already seen what Cortland Sutton can do. We've already seen what Albert O can do. Even though I rewatched that game a couple of days ago, and I still came out of that saying, Albert, my gosh, just stop it, please. But on a plus note, it shows that he has confidence in his recovery because one of the big things coming off of injury, I've broken my leg twice. And the big thing about coming off those injuries, it's almost 90% mental. You're completely healed. You're completely ready to go. And so much of it is thinking, wait a minute, can I take that impact? Can I juke and cut and all those little things? And what we saw from Albert O was really, really encouraging, which was, he was over the mental part of it. He goes, let's just go. And we saw the same thing from Cortland Sutton, which again is really good to see because I know from personal experience that the hardest part is the mental aspect. The physical part of it is actually the easiest part. And we saw good things from both. Saquon hasn't had the benefit of taking that first hit yet. Completely to your point, 100%. And that is a big deal. From a mental perspective, that is a huge deal from not taking that first hit and saying it's out of the way. Now we're good to go.
Right. So, and also keep in mind, folks, that Kenny Golladay, even though he got a really big contract with the Giants, he's going up against two former Bears cornerbacks who made his life really difficult when, they were in the same division in the NFC North. So
yeah, they're wearing the right colors now, the right shades at least.
So I don't really see Kenny Golladay having a big day. I think that Daniel Jones might be forcing the ball a little more than he probably should, and it's going to lead to incompletions or fingers crossed, interceptions. So with that being said, there was a question here for us from Dave from Dave Glassman. Says, I heard Patrick is starting over Hamler. Can you confirm? Rich, I have not heard anything about this.
I've heard rumors of the same thing, but until I get more than fleeting reports and getting something that's more, confirmational from multiple sources, I'm not taking that I'm just taking that as hearsay. I would certainly play Patrick. If you're asking me personally, if you're going to flip that question a little bit and kind of elaborate on it, I would certainly play Patrick over Hamler.
Mm-hmm.
Especially against a weak secondary, because what Hamler gives you is speed. So, I mean, we saw what he did when he ran past those guys in was it Seattle game or the with the other game? Either way, he ran past those guys and just made them look silly, right? It was like a wide open throw to Lock, so it was kind of laughable. But aside from that, Hamler's still learning the route tree. Hamler's still coming off his Hamler string issue, and we really need him to, I think, last the entirety of the season for us. So I think it's in our interest to have Patrick on the outside, Sutton on the other, and against a weak secondary to have another dimension for Teddy Bridgewater easing into the season with not only modest speed from both Sutton and Patrick, but you also get the dimension from both of them of height. And I think a lot of people are discounting that. When you have both guys that are 6'3", 6'4", and can jump, that's an added dimension to the offensive game that I think a lot of people are undervaluing, which is a big deal. And I've seen another comment or question here from Mr. Dave Glassman here. That would certainly be my starting three if we were going into three wides. It would be Sutton, Patrick, Jeudy in the slot, and go from there. I think Jeudy can get himself open. And I also think that Jeudy in the slot has something to prove. I think he needs to prove to us as Broncos fans and to his quarterback and team that he has gotten over what appeared to be a clear hesitation of catching the ball in the middle of the field last season, where we saw him with all of those drops. He needs, in my opinion, to show that he can get over that, because he's in the NFL now. Those catches need to be made. Full stop, period.
Mm-hmm. No, and guys, you just have to realize that the Broncos are so deep in wide receiver depth that if there's probably something going on with Hamler that the general public doesn't know about. And I'm not saying that Hamler's like really injured or anything, but maybe his recovery isn't coming fully along as we think it is. So that could be probably why, if this statement is true and Tim Patrick does make the starts over KJ Hamler, it's kind of like saving the best for last, because there's no doubt about it. Aside from Jeudy, Hamler's probably the fastest guy in terms of wide receiver out of those four guys. So,
Hamler's definitely faster in straight line speed.
Yeah, it's straight line speed. Probably more than so Jeudy. Jeudy, that man can cut through almost anything and make any defender look silly, especially any rookie defenders he's got heading his way this season. So I guess the Broncos offensive coaching staff wants to play it safe. They don't want KJ Hamler to go and, do something crazy. Now, it would be great to see him going out there and, doing something like he did in Carolina, where he just took off and he had 2 touchdowns. So that would be great. But, just as they play it safe, to me, that would probably be the safer bet. And it's not like Tim Patrick wouldn't be a safe bet. Tim Patrick is due to have a really good year in Denver, Rich.
I agree. So the interesting thing that I was kind of thinking about as well with this game, we've all made comments on it, and you hate to you hate to bring it up. Joe Judge with a Patriots resume where details matter, special teams is actually important to them. And then you flip the page and look at the Denver Broncos, where we saw, particularly after the first preseason game, a bit of a repeat of special teams blunders, which, dare I say, actually got worse as preseason went on. So we had a decent first game, a worse second game, and the worst third game on special teams for our Denver Broncos. So the other dimension of a football game, which I think, we seem to often overlook, but is so critical, is remember how we lost the Kansas City game?
Do I ever?
And I mean, I hate to bring up and salt and wound and all that kind of stuff. And we can move on hopefully after 2021, but we really did lose that via special teams play. I mean, if we're going to be blunt and honest with ourselves, we held Patrick Mahomes to record low statistical numbers on the offensive side of the ball. A good portion, and really the major reason why we lost that, was special teams. So where do you think we're going to stand against the Giants when you have to imagine that Joe Judge is going to take a page out of his Patriots tutelage, if you will, and his training, where special teams is critical and important, and compare that to our Mr. Tom McMahon, who has basically put up poor stats since he's been with Denver?
That's actually a really good point you make there, Rich. And unfortunately,
I do try.
Unfortunately, if there's one good thing that any coach can do Denver a favor in this season, it's get Tom McMahon fired before the end of the season. So if they can do that, or hell, if there can be some sort of sign that says Tom McMahon is going to be gone by the end of the season, I think that'll make all of Broncos country happy, because we've said it before on this podcast, or on this network, I should say, that the special teams is Denver's Achilles. It's a glaring weakness. It's not a secret. And it's something that any special teams team is going to really target and try to be effective on. Now, how I know that Vic Fangio has tried to fix special teams by getting that waiver pick recently. So let's just hope that one player can turn that special teams around for the better. And as much as I hate to say it, it could be something that will actually save Tom McMahon's job in Denver.
Sure. I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty concerned. I think that we could see some returns on us as a result of just the attention to detail that I know that Joe Judge is likely paying to the special team side of the ball. I think that it could put the Giants, despite them having a poor offense, even in the preseason and last season, we could see a spark on their offensive side of the ball if they get really good field position, which I could actually see it happening just because Tom McMahon, from what I've seen, has not prepared. Like it blows my mind. And so I'm hoping that I'm wrong, and I'm hoping that we see some progress, and I'm hoping that we see all of the right things. But we have seen games where special teams has been an Achilles heel. We have lost at least one game from last year as a result of special teams, and that's the Kansas City game. So I really do hope that we don't see special teams contributing to a loss or a danger of a loss with the New York Giants as a result.
And that's actually a good question, Avatar, who asks. My question is, if you get rid of Tom McMahon, who do you replace him with? And at this point, Avatar, I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of good names that are going to hit free agency next year. But then again, it could be something that, the Broncos could promote somebody from within. George Payton could bring in somebody that he's had connections with when he was in Minnesota. I mean, there's a lot of avenues that this can go, but right now it's a pretty big glaring thing that Tom McMahon is not the guy. And like Johnny Baki just says, literally anybody else, in other words, literally anybody else.
That was going to be my answer, so thanks. But I think that there were certainly really good or reasonable options in the offseason. Now, if you're looking in-season change, and sorry, I do want to make sure that we capture Avatar's premise of what he was kind of leaning on here. Other pods don't do this. I really love having this direct interaction with everybody here, so thank you. Yeah, he means during the season. And so you would have to either make the move during the bye and then make some major overhauls by bringing in someone with a different philosophy, or you would have to promote within and hope that the problem at that point is Tom McMahon and just awful coaching. Right. And either way, you're probably better off because we've already seen what we have from Tom McMahon over, I think it's 3 seasons now, and it's just not good. In fact, can someone correct me if I'm wrong? I actually thought Tom McMahon was the only person that survived on our team as a coordinator, or am I wrong?
I think you're right.
I actually thought again, I could be completely out to lunch. I could have sworn that Tom McMahon was from the previous regime and was the only coach that survived the transition to Vic Fangio. I might be completely dead wrong, and I apologize if I am, but I have this, it's in the back of my mind where I have a funny feeling that he might be the only coach that was around from before, at this point here, you have to think, like, why are you still here? It's obvious that Fangio has no ties to him. So maybe it's not Shermer that has those glossies. Maybe it's McMahon that has the glossies of Elway doing something that he ought not. Who knows? But I mean, at the end of the day, I actually think that you could pull in either assistants from other gifted special teams in the NFL who would probably do a better job at coaching special teams than Tom McMahon. And I also think that you could start maybe at this point digging into the college ranks and bringing up some guys who have shown well on special teams as well.
No, I totally agree with that. So, Avatar, I hope we answered your question to the best of our ability. But more than likely, whenever a team cuts a coach or somebody, they usually just hire or promote from within, and then they become like the interim coach. And as the season wears on and the team doesn't look like they're going to go anywhere, then they start giving that coach more and more control. That way they kind of have a better idea to see, like, okay, we got something with this guy, let's keep him around. Or does the team start looking around at who's available at the end of the season after Black Monday, and see who gets canned, who gets fired, and who they can bring in from a different position to fill in whatever it is that they need. So with Tom McMahon, I don't think anybody's going to come knocking on our door and saying, hey, we want that guy to run our special teams.
Right. Yeah. I think poaching is not something we're concerned about with him. So sorry. Looking ahead, I would love to hear, again, of everyone who's with us still, we thank you. What are we thinking in terms of scores? Now that we've kind of gone through a little positional breakdowns, we've gone into defense, we've gone into offense. We've spoken about, some things like two tight ends versus 3 wideouts for the Broncos. Mm-hmm. We've spoken about, the weaker Giants offensive line, the strong defensive line of the Giants. And we've also spoken about the fact that preseason and last season, the Denver Broncos did in fact struggle with the run. So we may need to, that may be something that is of concern for us as a team. All of that being factored in, where do you see us as a score?
I think 30-10 Denver. I think the Broncos put up their first 30 burger, if not more, of the game. And, obviously our Broncos defense is going to stifle at the beginning, but every team usually eventually gets a garbage time touchdown, maybe 2 if they're friendly, depending on how Vic Fangio wants to kind of take his foot off the pedal, so to speak. But no doubt in my mind, the Broncos win this, and they put up more than a 30 burger for sure, 30 points at the least. So 30-10 would be my final score. WizKid saying 34-17 Broncos. That's right.
So WizKid has at least 1 touchdown for the Giants. Would be curious. Do you think that's going to happen during, we'll call it competitive time, or do you think that touchdown is going to come near the back end where maybe it was 34-10, as an example, And then that kind of, as 6'10" pointed out, that garbage time touchdown kind of creeps onto the board. Just curious as to kind of where that slots in for you.
Johnny Baki saying on Nothing Rhymes, we predicted 30-7. So I can honestly see that, 30-7, that 7 being just obviously that garbage time touchdown that the Broncos defense will allow their opponents. But if they can pitch a shutout, that would be beyond wonderful. I think it would just be great for Denver.
So for me, my general take on this is, as long as Tom McMahon can stay out of his own way, I think we can possibly hold the Giants to not scoring a touchdown in this game. Because I do not believe that the Denver Broncos defense, with the way that we are coached and the talent that we are going up against in the Giants offense, I think we can hold them to not scoring a touchdown. So if I had to pick a score, I would be kind of closer to being along the lines of Avatar here, where I would have us landing in the 27-30 range, and I would have us holding the Giants from anywhere from 9 to 12 points.
I could totally see that. Avatar saying 33-12, and defense will continue to not allow an offensive touchdown. So.
And also just before we go here, I mentioned something very similar on the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast on this past week, where I did believe that this is our game where we have the real potential to hold a team to not scoring that offensive touchdown as a result of offensive talent versus defensive talent.
And Dave Glassman saying no touchdowns allowed. And that, my friend, would be beautiful to see. Guys, just keep in mind that as we keep getting closer and closer to kickoff, that your Denver Broncos are, knock on wood, healthy. They're strong. They're ready to rebound from a crappy year last year where everything that could go wrong did. So with that, Dave Glassman says, or asked, I should say, has there been an initial injury reports released?
So I'm happy to jump in if you don't have anything here. The short answer is there has not been an official injury report. I assume that you're referring to like the official one that the team puts out prior to games and whatnot. That has not been put out. No. However, if you look at the denverbroncos.com website as well as affiliates, the news right now out of Dove Valley is that Bradley Chubb and Noah Fant will all be healthy. Those are the only two players thus far that have been kind of held out and held back and that kind of stuff. So it's looking promising at the very least. However, things can change in practice, and you never want to say that aloud, but it's football and it's inevitable. Some guys will roll ankles and that kind of stuff. But as it stands right now, it's looking like we will be full health, or at least as good as you can be in full health for a football game. It appears that they are holding back Bradley Chubb intentionally to try and get him fully healthy for the season after coming off of his injury. I can't remember what he had, but it wasn't from last season. I think he hurt himself last couple of days from the last game. And then Fant is nursing an injury right now, and they're hoping that he will be 100% come the season.
Yeah. Johnny Baki saying Danny Amendola signed to the Texans, which is interesting. And also, I just got a breaking news thing. Latavius Murray, the running back for the Saints, just got cut. So that's a pretty big shock. And there are a lot of running back needy teams out there, Rich. So
Ravens.
Yeah. Well, the
Ravens
just put
Ravens.
Le'Veon Bell on their practice squad. So Latavius Murray is not a guy you put on a practice squad. He's a guy you sign. So it'll be interesting to see where a guy like Murray ends up going into. I don't think he'll be a free agent for long. But then again, I could be wrong. He could sign up with – I know the Rams traded for Sony Michel, and he's great and everything. But Murray is a guy that provides really good depth, even if he's not a starter. So
it also depends on the reason why he got cut. So, for example, these NFL teams will do their due diligence. And we know right now that he got cut. Now the question is, why did he get cut? And if stuff comes out after the fact where we'll just say it's less than flattering, some NFL teams will completely remove him from an option. He's just not an available option. Other teams will overlook that, Kansas City Chiefs, and bring him in anyways, regardless of whatever he has done, just due to talent. So we'll see what happens there, and we'll wait and see. I reserve judgment until, and I hold off on judgment until that information comes out.
Well, as what Glassman was pretty much reading my mind, it was money. I know the Saints are going to be really strapped for cash as they're going into a cap space hole or something, or whatever it's called. So they're really going to be looking for players to take pay cuts. And if they don't take pay cuts, then it's either get traded or, worst case scenario, they get cut and the Saints take the dead money hit if there is any. So, and the boss says, does anyone care about men, or does Amendola even really matter anymore? I mean, when you put it like that, boss, maybe.
Well, I think you can put it this way, right? I think Cole Beasley has aged better than Amendola has. I think Cole Beasley has shown that he can maintain a relative high level of play even into his later years in his career, whereas Amendola, even when he was younger, was still getting injured a fair amount. So I think it's fair. I think that's a fair comment is what I'm saying. I think that's an absolute fair comment, which is when he's playing, he's okay. And that's when he's playing. The problem is he doesn't play all that often because he's always hurt. So we'll wait and see.
Guys, as we head towards the end of our show, I just wanted to promote our good friend Johnny Baki. If you guys haven't heard and you don't follow him on Twitter, first of all, shame on you. And second of all, go on Twitter and follow Johnny Baki on there. He's at Broncos_Viking, if I'm not mistaken, is his Twitter handle. Look him up. He just wrote his very first piece on Denver nosebleeds. I hope I said that right. So, guys, make sure you check out his article. It's a great read. I read it earlier today. Show some support for our good friend Johnny Baki, Broncos Viking, who is the co-host of the Nothing Rhymes With podcast. So, if you guys want the link, go follow him on Twitter. He's got the link up there for sure. Or go to denvernosebleeds.com, I think is the website, and you can go and read the article yourself. It's a great read. I promise you, you're not going to regret it. Does Johnny even... I'm sorry, Johnny.
Well, boss, he is injured. So...
Oh man, we're gonna get canceled.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, but guys,
in all fairness, I really do highly recommend you follow our good friend Johnny Baki on Twitter. As you said, Broncos Viking. He is a gifted writer, has put out a phenomenal article, and there will be more to come. So please pay close attention and follow him and us for updates on updated Broncos content as well as new articles. We will be sharing Johnny's content as it is released.
But yeah, guys, that's going to have to do it for today's show. Rich and I want to thank everybody that joined us today. The boss Mundungus, of course, as always, Johnny, Dave. I'm going to try to go as quick as I can. Avatar, Jason, Landon. Who else did we have? Mark, who came and stopped by. Thank you so much. Travis, our good friend Glenn Hauser. What was the name of our special inventory guest? Nikki.
Nikki.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
It was great seeing Nikki in here. And I always love other fans.
Mm-hmm. Kenneth Booker, EJ, and I'm sorry if I missed anybody. And our good friend Savage from earlier. Thank you guys so much for joining us and being a part of the chat, being a part of the show. So we love you. We thank you so much for tuning in. And I personally, Mahai, salute all of you guys for being awesome fans in the chat.
So, guys, that's about do us for today. We'd like to thank all of you for joining Broncos Talk. It really is awesome doing this every Tuesday and talking Broncos news, updates. And guys, the regular season is here upon us. Speaking of seasons, regular seasons and new seasons, we are now rolling into season 2, and we are super, super excited. And I'm going to pull out the French. That is deux in French. Deux. And so we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. For all of you who cannot join us live, that is too bad. However, we appreciate you joining us after the fact. Rolling fully into season 2, we are going to have our next podcast on Thursday with the Banner podcast, which is Mile High Roundtable on Thursdays, 76543. You can figure out the time zones yourself. And that is with Mundungus, 6'10", Glenn, and Monsieur Boggins. Again, continuing on the whole French theme. And we have on Fridays at 76543, which I believe is the new time and date of the Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast with Johnny Baki and Isaiah. Sorry, I made a total mistake there. Pookie night. It's Floridian slip. Guys, we're about to head out. Please go ahead and be sure to share, like, and comment on these videos. And this coming Sunday, this is a big announcement. It was announced on our Mile High Roundtable. It is the first episode of the Neigh-borhood, which is this Sunday. And that'll be just before the game. We're going to ask that you please go ahead and follow us on Twitter. We will be announcing all of the start times, the guests, the people that are there, all that kind of stuff, as well as sharing the links to you. My Twitter handle is directly below my face here, kind of over that away. And a 6'10" Mexican, yours is over that away too. By the way, on camera, everything is reversed. That's why you keep on seeing us mess up. So on that note, thank you very much for joining us. And my high five.
Woo!
Woo!
Let's go,
Thank you very
baby.
much.
Hasta luego. And